Hey everyone, how y'all doing? Welcome and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to Vlogmas day 29. We are literally so close to the end of Vlogmas. I cannot believe it. This is crazy. But today we're talking about some of my favorite surprising reads of 2020. So all the books that just completely took me by surprise this year and that I ended up loving so much. So before we get into the video, make sure to subscribe down below if you have not yet already, because we only have a couple more days of Vlogmas and you're not going to want to miss the final videos. And also, if you're not caught up on Vlogmas videos, what are you doing? The playlist is down below in the description. You guys can go check it out so you can catch up on all of the fun videos I've been uploading this month. But now let's get right on into the video. So the first book I'm going to talk about today is Warcross by Marie Lu. So obviously I owned this book, so I knew to some capacity that I might like it. I bought this book because of two things. One, I love Marie Lu and so I wanted to support her and buy her book. Second, I found a signed copy and I really wanted to have her signature, so I bought it knowing that I might not like the book. Fine. So the reason why I was hesitant going into this book is because it deals with video games and I'm not a huge video game person, so I was kind of scared that I wouldn't like it because of that aspect. This book deals a whole lot with virtual reality. It's kind of like integral to the whole plot and the world of this book, and so I was very, very nervous going into it that I wouldn't like it because of that. But surprisingly, I really enjoyed it, like the video game aspects as well. I wasn't originally planning on reading this book until I found the signed copy, and so for me to love it as much as I actually ended up loving it was a big surprise to me. I loved the audiobook. The narrator did such a good job. I loved the voices that they did for the characters, and just the overall storytelling of the audiobook was really, really good. I obviously love Marie Lu and her writing because I love the Legend series, so I already knew that was okay going into this book. It was just more so the actual content of this book I wasn't so sure of, but I absolutely loved it. I just realized I haven't given you guys like an actual synopsis for this book yet. So we basically follow our main character Amika, and she is a bounty hunter hacker, and she hacks herself into this really important game of Warcross, which is this virtual reality that has kind of taken over the world, and she hacks herself into the game. She's not supposed to be seen by anybody, but she ends up being seen by literally everyone. They can all see her. So she ends up getting a phone call from the creator of the game, Hideo, and he invites her down to Tokyo. She thinks that she is in trouble because she hacked into his game, but he ends up actually asking her to be his own personal bounty hunter. It is such a good book, and like I said, like it took me completely by surprise. I thought maybe I'll like it, but I didn't think I would love it. But I loved this book. It was so interesting, so much fun. I loved the relationship between Amika and Hideo. Oh, everything about this book was so cool. I'm really happy that I finally read this book this year and enjoyed it. The next one on this list was actually quite a surprise for me, and it kind of like formed the rest of my reading year for me a little bit, and that is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This is an adult romance. I'll give you a quick synopsis for it. So we follow our main character Lucy, and she works at this publishing house as an assistant, and she works across this guy named Joshua, who's an assistant of another person at the publishing company. They're kind of rivals. They don't really like each other. But then one day they end up going up for the same promotion, and there's a lot of tension, and they end up figuring out maybe they don't actually hate each other, or like real feelings come to the surface. It's very loose hate to love. The hate isn't very strong. It doesn't last very long, so don't go into this book fully expecting like a strong, very good hate to love, enemies to lovers. It's not fully like that, and I know a lot of people went into this book expecting that and were disappointed. I loved it so much, but the reason it's ended up on my surprising books of the year list is because I have read a couple adult romances before, or like adult books in general, and they were good. I liked them, but I've never been like huge into the adult romance genre until this year. So I read this book. I started reading it. It wasn't very good at the beginning. There was something about the writing style and the dialogue and just the way Lucy was acting that I wasn't a huge fan of. It just felt kind of weird. But then I got into the story. Like once the romance started to kind of happen and there was like all this tension, I was like, oh yes, I'm living for this. And I just became completely attached. I read it in a sitting, I'm pretty sure, and I was just obsessed with it. I've read this book twice this year, so that's how you know I really love something, is if I reread it multiple times in a year. It was just so good. Like I don't know how to describe it. I was just completely in love with it, and because of this book I've read and tried so many more adult romances this year, and it's now become like a favorite genre. Like I'm obsessed with it. So obviously 2020 has been a really hard year for literally everybody, and I feel like this book and romance books in general have just been such a huge comfort to me. They're so easy to read. They're such escape reads, and so I really appreciate this book for so many different reasons, but it really just gave me an escape from the world for a little bit into this beautiful romance that I am literally obsessed with. The next book is Always Never Yours by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. So this is a YA contemporary book. It deals with high school theater. So our main character Megan has never been one for the spotlight. She doesn't want to be an actor. She wants to be a director for theater, but she needs an acting credit to get into the school or program that she wants. So she auditions, but she she's hoping just to get like a very small like background role that doesn't really mean anything, but she ends up getting the lead in the play for Romeo and Juliet, so she is Juliet, and it's just such a cute book. I specifically bought it because this year I was doing the second draft of my own high school theater book called The Show Must Go On, and I was like, I need to read books that are similar to mine in YA contemporary that have some sort of theater element to it, because I was never in theater in high school. I was never a drama kid, and so I was like, I need some like inspiration. So that's like my sole purpose for getting this book. Plus I'd heard some good things about it. I had seen it around before. My expectations weren't that high for it. I was like, this is purely just for like research and like inspiration. But I read it and I became so invested in it. I loved these characters, this story, the romance. Oh my god, I loved the romance in this book. There is slight cheating in this book, but if I remember correctly, it was taken care of pretty quickly, and cheating personally to me doesn't bother me when it's in books. I can let it go when it's fictionalized, but if that bothers you, maybe don't read this book. Maybe, I mean, it's very slight. It's dealt with pretty quickly, but I don't know, like I just loved this book. It was like a stellar YA contemporary. I definitely want to read more of their books, but this is just so cute and I loved it so much. I definitely was not expecting to love it as much as I did, so I was very pleasantly surprised by this one. The next book is Serious Moonlight by Jen Bennett. I'll give you like a brief synopsis for this one because I'm really bad at describing it, but we follow our main character Birdie, and she's really into solving mysteries, and this one summer she ends up getting a job at this hotel, and there's like a mystery brewing, and she meets this guy who she actually met over the summer before she got this job, and they kind of had like this one night stand, which she kind of freaked out about because she's never done that before, and things are kind of awkward, but they end up becoming friends and trying to solve this mystery together. That was a really bad description, but it's a really cute book. But the thing with this one is I loved Alex Approximately by Jen Bennett, and then I read Starry Eyes, which is her other book, and I just wasn't as impressed with it. I think it's because I went into it with my own personal expectations, thinking that I could relate to it in a specific way when I ended up not being able to in quite the way that I wanted to. That was a weird sentence. So I ended up being a bit disappointed by Starry Eyes, so I was a bit hesitant to go into this one thinking that Alex Approximately was just a one-off and that was the only book I was going to enjoy by Jen Bennett, but I was wrong. I really loved this book, so I think if I were to revisit Starry Eyes, I'd probably like it more knowing what it's like, but I loved this book. It was just so cute. I loved the romance and kind of the tension with it. I really liked the topic of the one night stand and kind of her feelings about it. There was also talks of grief with this book because our main character Birdie did lose her mother, and she kind of has this feeling like everyone she gets close to dies or leaves, so she's very hesitant to open up to other people, and I really enjoyed seeing that portrayed in a book. I just think that everything about this book was done so well. The mystery was really fun. Every interaction was really great, and Jen Bennett does a spectacular job at portraying character hobbies in her books. Like, she is one of the best at putting hobbies in books, and I'm obsessed with it. Like, the hobbies just end up becoming such a huge part of the story. This one was mainly just a surprise because I was disappointed by her previous book, but this one blew me out of the water and I was so pleasantly surprised by it, and I'm so happy that I loved it. And then the next book I'm going to talk about is The Devouring Gray by Christine Lynn Herman. So I am really bad at describing this book, but it's basically set in this town of Four Paths, New York, and the town is being like terrorized by this like evil beast thing called the Gray, I think. Am I remembering that correctly? I don't know. And there are these founding families of the town that are kind of there to protect everybody and keep everyone safe, but people keep dying because of this monster. And then one of the founding families comes back to the town because they had moved away, so they come back and they all kind of have to work together to try to save the town. That was a really bad description. I don't know how to describe this book, but it's not like I went into this book thinking that I wasn't gonna like it. I thought there was a pretty good chance because it's comped as Stranger Things and The Raven Boys, which are two things that I love. But I had picked this book up twice previously from the library, and I DNF'd it at around the same part, like a couple of chapters in, and I thought it might have been the book's fault, but I think it was just me and reading it at the times that I was reading it where I just wasn't in the mood for it, because when I finally picked it up and made it all the way through, I was so invested. I loved it so much. I loved the cast of characters, the way they interacted with each other. I loved the atmosphere and the setting of this book. It was so vivid and like immersive, which I really enjoyed, and I really liked the writing. Like, I just really liked everything about this book. I thought it was really well done, and I'm just really happy that I actually ended up enjoying it. And the last book I'm going to talk about today is Carabao by Stephanie Garber. So this is a book that I've had on my shelf for a couple of years now. I bought it at Powell's for $9. It was on sale. I was pretty happy about that. And I was excited about it. A lot of people on booktube love it. One of my best friends, Leah, really loves this series and she really wanted me to read it, and I think that was kind of like my main inspiration for actually picking it up. But I was always kind of hesitant of it, and it was also one of those books that I had picked up a couple of times before, read a little bit of it, and then just put it back down. Like, there was a lot of times where I would just read the letters at the beginning, because at the beginning there are letters from main character Scarlet to this guy named Legend. I didn't describe what this book's about, but there is this thing called Carabao, which is kind of like this game thing that's very like elusive, and he has to be like invited to it. And Scarlet, our main character, has always wanted to go and take her sister for her birthday, but she's never been invited. Her letters always go ignored until one day where Legend actually writes back and invites her to Carabao. So I would always read those letters at the beginning and then I'd put the book down, or I'd get through the first chapter and then I'd put the book down. So I just never actually committed to it. But then I listened to the audiobook this year, which is narrated by my favorite audiobook narrator, Rebecca Soler. She's my absolute favorite. And that just changed the game for me. I was actually able to get through this book. And it's not like a favorite by any means, but I did really enjoy it. I liked the characters. The romance, I think, was my favorite part. And I also just really liked the world. It was very whimsical and immersive and just fun. Again, this year I feel like has really been about escapist reads, and this one was definitely that. It definitely transported me to a different world, a different place, and I could stop and not think about the world for a little bit and just enjoy this one instead. And I really enjoyed that. It was just a really fun series. I didn't take it too seriously, and like I said, it's not a favorite or anything, but it was something that I did enjoy this year that did surprise me, because I was scared I wasn't gonna like it. My friend even thought I might not like it, even though she wanted me to read it. So I'm just really happy that I actually did end up enjoying it, and I had a really good time with it, so love that. So those are all of my favorite surprising books of 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a huge thumbs up. Comment down below some of your surprising favorites of 2020, because I'd really like to know. Also comment down below a red heart emoji if you stayed till the very end. Subscribe if you have not yet already, and check out my Vlogmas playlist down below if you have not caught up with Vlogmas videos yet, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.